Hello and welcome back. This is Junhua from TCM Explained. We have been learning about vital substances, and so far we covered essence, qi, and blood. In this video, we are going to talk about body fluids. First, let's talk about the formation of body fluid. Body fluids are formed from food and drinks like qi and blood. Once food and drinks are received by the stomach, the spleen transforms them and separates clean fluids from dirty fluids. The spleen sends the clean fluids up to the lungs, and the stomach sends the dirty fluids down to the small intestine. When the lungs receive the clean fluids from the spleen, the lungs disperse and diffuse them to the skin, body hair, and the space between skin and muscles. In other words, the lungs sends the clean fluids to the exterior of the body. The lungs also direct fluids down to the kidneys and urinary bladder. In turn, yang qi of the kidneys warms and evaporates those fluids to moisten the lungs. The stomach sends the dirty fluids to the small intestine, and they are separated into pure and impure fluids. Pure fluids then go down to the urinary bladder, and impure fluids go down to the large intestine, where some of the fluids are reabsorbed and some are excreted in the stool. The pure fluids from the small intestine end up at the urinary bladder, and they are further transformed and separated into pure and impure. Pure fluids go up to the exterior of the body as sweat, and impure fluids are excreted as urine. So there was a big picture of what's going on with body fluids. As we can see, many organs are involved with body fluids. Here is the summary. Production of body fluids involves the spleen, stomach, small intestine, large intestine, and so on. They are all important, but the major ones are the spleen and stomach, the root of post-heaven. As a side note, the stomach is also known as the origin of fluids. And in some instances, we use the word stomach to refer to the gastrointestinal tract, which includes the small intestine and large intestine as well. One thing to remember is that transformation and separation by these organs rely on yang qi of the kidneys. We know that in order for qi to have transforming function, there must be warmth. The kidneys are known as the gate of the stomach because the warmth of kidneys yang qi is crucial for the transforming function of the stomach. So if the kidneys fail to provide this warmth, we can expect secondary problems to arise at the stomach. Now let's move on to distribution of body fluids. Distribution of body fluids involves the spleen, lungs, kidneys, liver, and triple burner. Here the main ones to remember are the spleen, lungs, and kidneys. The spleen governs transformation and transportation. The spleen is the first organ that is responsible for transforming and transporting fluids. The spleen qi ascends fluids up to the lungs, and the stomach qi descends fluids down to the small intestine. The lungs are located in the upper burner, and they disperse and diffuse the clean fluids from the spleen to the exterior of the body. For that reason, the lungs are known as the upper source of water. Also, the lungs are said to regulate the water passages. The lungs not only diffuse the fluids upwards and outwards, but also descend the fluids downwards to the kidneys and urinary bladder. The kidneys are in the lower burner, and they help the qi transformation of fluids. That is why the kidneys are known as the lower source of water. After the kidneys receive the fluids from the lungs, yang qi of the kidneys warms and evaporates those fluids and sends back to the lungs to moisten them. The kidneys send the fluids downwards as well. The kidneys are said to control the two lower orifices, which refer to the urethra and anus, where urine and stool exit. So the spleen, lungs, and kidneys are important in distribution of body fluids. Since they are located in each triple burner, We can also look at it from that perspective. The upper burner is compared to a fog or mist because the lungs disperse and diffuse the fluids to the exterior. Also, the stream of fluids formed by the yang qi of the kidneys ascends to the upper burner to moisten the lungs. The middle burner is compared to a froth of bubbles or maceration chamber. The stomach, which is also known as the sea of water and grains, controls the receiving, rotting, and ripening of food and water. The spleen ascends the pure fluids upwards to the lungs. The stomach descends the impure fluids downwards to the small intestines. The lower burner is compared to a drainage ditch or swamp. Further separation of the pure and impure fluids and excretion of stool and urine happen here. And of course, the yang qi of the kidneys play the most important role. Notice how all these organs in the triple burner have both up and down movement of body fluids. In fact, the triple burner is also known as the passage of water and food, like a system or waterway responsible for the transformation, transportation, and excretion of fluids. Before we end, let's talk about the functions of body fluids. Body fluids can be divided into two groups and each has different functions. Body fluids in Chinese is Jin Ye. Jin is fluids that belong to yang. They are clear, light, and watery fluids that move fast, and they are under the control of the lungs. We already know that one of the functions of the lungs is to distribute the defensive qi and disperse and diffuse the clean fluids to the exterior of the body. That is why Jin fluids circulate with the defensive qi outside of vessels on the exterior of the body. So their function is to moisten skin and muscles. Ye is fluids that belong to yin. They are turbid, heavy, and dense fluids that move slow, and they are under the control of the spleen and kidneys. Ye fluids circulate with the nutritive qi inside of vessels in the interior of the body. Their function is to nourish the joints, spine, brain, bone marrow, and orifices. So we covered the formation, distribution, and functions of body fluids. If you want to learn more about the relationships among qi, blood, and body fluids, check out our blog post. Next video will be on mind, the last of the 5 vital substances.